What's up, guys? It is a fine day here in the Sunshine State. Today we are going to be discussing filler plate kits. We're going to show you how we make them. We're going to show you how we install them. So yeah, hang out, check it out. Alright guys, so today the chassis we're going to be using is an EK chassis. This is actually a good friend of mine's car, and this will be the second day I've worked on for him over the years. Alright, as you can see, we're installing the front wall plates, the big plates, filler plates, and we'll also be doing shock tower extensions as well. So here you can see the filler plates. This is what they look like right when they come off the burn table. Yeah, they're still a little rough, still a little work that needs to be done. But after we put them on the belt sander, put them in the tumbler, they'll be nice and clean and ready to install. So the reason why we use the tumbler is it'll clean off all of these burrs around the edges and just generally finish the part in such a way to where it helps it and keeps it from rusting. And this helps me with inventory. This helps me with packaging and everything else, so I can always have it in stock for you guys, ready to ship. Alright, so now, before we get started, I'm going to take all these parts over to the belt sander, and I'm going to show you a segment of the parts getting cut, getting cleaned, getting packaged, all of that, so you guys can see what's going on there. Alright. Alright, so now that you guys have seen that, you've got a pretty good idea of what it goes into the parts and what it takes to make them. Pretty time-consuming process, but after sanding, this is what they end up looking like. I didn't run these to the tumbler because these are the ones that we're just going to go ahead and directly install in this car. So, if you look over here, I've already installed some of them. This is where the AC hole used to be, hole for the wiring harness, hole for some more wiring. Still got some more cleanup to do there. Went ahead and did these larger brake holes. When I was working on this before, I actually ran out of wire. You can tell where that happened right there. Alright, so what we got left is these guys in the corner here. This one. Got a couple down here. Alright, this stuff's pretty self-explanatory when it comes to installing these, but we'll go ahead and go over it anyways. If you look on all these parts, they got a number on them, right? And each one of those numbers corresponds to this diagram here on this instruction sheet. And every single one of my kits come with this instruction sheet. Makes it real easy, pretty self-explanatory. Just take the number, corresponds with the hole on the sheet. But before we get started, I want to discuss one thing with you guys, and mainly because I get a ton of questions about this all the time. We're going to go ahead and discuss welders. You know, what kind of welder I should use, what kind of wire I should use, what kind of gas, all those things. So what I like to use is a gas welder. And I've got a gas welder from Hobart, 140 machine. It actually plugs into a regular 110 plug, just like this, 120 plug. And a lot of you guys end up using flux core. Flux core is not something you should really typically use with automotive. It's really kind of a messy weld. It's very porous, and it definitely doesn't like thinner materials. The flux core is great for heavy materials, getting into structural and things like that. But when it comes to these Honda engine bays, that's not what we have here. These Honda engine bays, they are paper thin, literally nothing to it. So using flux core just generally makes a real big mess of things and creates a lot more grinding, a lot more work. And it'll also make the engine bay rust quicker. Like I said earlier, it's a porous weld. It's kind of a nasty weld, especially when you're doing it on this thin sheet metal. And yeah, the job just will not last as long. So I recommend to everyone that you go with a gas welder. And I usually use 030 wire. 030 is pretty good for this super thin sheet metal. You use just 75-25 gas. You can get this stuff at any welding supply, and just about every major city in the country has multiple places to get this. These days you might even be able to get it at Lowe's, I'm not sure. But yeah, definitely use a gas welder. Makes things a lot easier. 030 wire, 75-25 gas. Pretty standard, works really well for me. It's been working well for me for about 15 years now. Alright, the first hole we're going to do today is this hole right here. And you guys can probably tell it's got this lip here. Yep. And I see a lot of people, they just try to beat this lip in and weld the plate behind it and all this other nonsense. All you got to do to get the plate to fit is grind that lip down. You grind that lip down, it actually opens up this hole a little wider, and the plate that we provide fits perfect. Look on the instructions here. It actually explains it, number 2 and number 4. So there's one in each corner. This one here I've already installed, and this one here I still need to grind down and get it prepped to put the plate in. So I'll go ahead and throw the GoPro on the tripod so you guys can get a good view of that. Alright guys, so after grinding that, you can probably see here you're left with this big old nasty burr. Some of it will come off easy, but you're going to end up having to use a tool to get that out of there. So what I like to use is one of these. It's called a burr bit. You just put it on your 90-degree grinder. And by the way, this is pretty much the only tool that will fit in this corner. See what kind of space you're working with here. Definitely no room for an angle grinder. But yeah, it's just a basic 90-degree grinder with a roll-lock disc, like a 40 grit. Cuts down the metal pretty quick. But swap that over to this, and we'll go ahead and clean the rest of this hole up, and we'll be ready to fit our plate. Alright, as you guys can see now, the hole's nice and clean, no burr. Ready to install the plate. So this is really a simple thing. Basically what we do is we use this magnet, connect the magnet to the plate, put it on the engine bay, and tack away. Now one thing that I do recommend, remember how I said earlier there's numbers on all these, that you go ahead and mount the plate with the number facing away from the engine bay. This way when you do this, you don't have any extra body work or anything like that trying to get that number filled up, because it's got a little bit of an indentation there. So, go ahead and get our magnet. And just like that, she fits. Tiny little gap the whole way around, but makes it a little easier to weld. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the welder ready, get her tacked off. Alright, before we start welding, I wanted to go ahead and discuss fire safety. Pretty important, especially when you're welding on a car. If you look here, I got this fiberglass blanket covering up the windshield. And it's a basically just a welding curtain. It's a fiberglass / Kevlar blanket. Definitely keeps the windshield from getting damaged. As when you're welding on these engine bays, the bits of spatter will come up and hit the glass, and it will literally destroy it. You'll end up having these little indentations and little spots that you'll never be able to get rid of. So definitely make sure you cover the glass. If you don't have a welding curtain like I have, old wet towels will work too. Just get some wet towels and cover up the windshield, and everything will be good there. Another thing you want to make sure of is when you're welding on the firewall of the car, you end up having bits of spatter that end up coming into the inside of the car. Now if you've got a car that has carpet in it, things like that, you definitely want to have somebody in here watching the fires for you, maybe with a water bottle and some wet rags. And definitely keep a fire extinguisher close. But with this particular car, I got no carpet. I don't even have any sound deadening. There's pretty much nothing in here that's going to catch fire. But just something to be aware of. You know, anytime you're welding on a car, things like that, it's important to pay attention to those things. Alright guys, as you can see, we got it all tacked off. Pretty simple process, just move the magnet around, get it flat. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and throw the GoPro on the tripod and we'll weld her up. Alright, so you guys probably noticed whenever I was welding this, that I was just kind of pulsing it, more or less just squeezing the trigger, letting go, moving on, squeezing the trigger. And remember how I said earlier that these engine bays are basically paper thin. So if you tried to stay in it, you know, without just pulsing and zapping like I showed you, it would just melt holes everywhere and just create a big old mess. So basically we just pulse weld it. Tack it, move on, tack it, move on, tack it, move on. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and get our angle grinder, grind it down, and you can have a look at what it's going to look like when it's done. Always wear safety glasses. Alright guys, so after just a few minutes of cleanup work, as you can see, the hole is virtually non-existent. All you'll have to do here is spray a little bit of epoxy, a little bit of high build primer, and that'll be it. There will be no body work there. And that pretty much goes for everything. As long as you can mount the plate flush, you know, grind the weld down evenly, you'll end up with the same result. And basically, you know, you just repeat the process for all the holes. Same thing I just did there, except you won't have to grind the lip down. With all these, you'll just clean off this paint surface around the holes, get your magnet, put the plate in, tack her off and weld her. That'll be it. Simple process, simple deal. Alright, another thing I wanted to touch on real quick before we close up is once you get these things welded, you'll see the inside of here. It makes a pretty big mess of things. So you're going to want to make sure you come back in here with a wire wheel, clean all this stuff off, and at least put some kind of primer on there, something, bed liner, whatever you choose. But just make sure you do something with that, because if you leave these, it'll just end up rusting out, cause problems for you later. Alright, so I think that about sums it up for this video. I think you guys got the gist of it. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Make sure you guys keep a lookout. We're going to be doing videos on the big plates, the front wall plates, the rear corner plates, shock tower extensions. We're basically going to be making videos on every single thing we make. That way you guys have a reference to get them installed yourself. Make sure you guys please like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks for watching. Alright guys, this is Xavion's very first time using a welder. Not so bad, right? Now try to stay in it for a second, put a good fat down. Okay. Alright, that's the first tack Xavion ever made. How do you feel about it?
Slightly terrified.
Alright, that was awesome. Zay's first weld. Not too bad. We're just zapping it because this is really, really thin 16 gauge. But yeah, not bad.
Nice. Well, I'm ahead of my classmates.
Very good. Very good.